Hello everyone, let's begin the discussion for the featured news of the day. So this is a particular Gazette for 19 July 2021 and the featured news for today is covering COVID-19 pandemic and the livelihood loss. It is a very important article and you need to cover this article in great detail. Now, why is this particular article, why was this particular topic in news in the first place? Now we have seen that according to a new study that was actually conducted across 10 states of India, we have seen that the loss of income and livelihood, the loss of livelihood among the rural communities is among the top concerns, Now we have seen that because of the pandemic, because of the lockdown, there has been a loss of livelihood, there has been a loss of income in the rural economies precisely, and they are struggling to cope with the effects of COVID-19. So this was the study conducted across 10 states. Let us see what were the important findings of the news. Now see, first of all, according to ILO, that is International Labour Organization, according to them, nearly 25 million jobs have been lost worldwide due to the pandemic. Now, because of this COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown, the 2.5 करोड़ लोगों की jobs जो है वो निकल गई है उनके हाथ से. 25 million jobs have been lost. Now, key providers of employment, जो सबसे ज्यादा employment देते थे अपने लोगों को, खासकर इंडिया में, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर, टूरिज्म सेक्टर, हॉस्पिटैलिटी सेक्टर, travel, services, retail industries, along with small and medium enterprises, ये आपके important sectors जो है, that are the key providers of employment, they have actually bore the acute brunt of COVID-19. Now, because these sectors were the key providers of employment, they have actually, stopped giving employment to these millions and millions of people that have lost the job because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this particular study, they are actually acknowledging that social distancing and self-isolation and lockdown was an important need of the hour. But along with that, there are again growing concerns regarding the economic impact of the lockdown. Fine. एक तो इसका economic impact है, and the dilemma is between the economic impact of it as well as the human impact of it. Fine. Now, human lives are going to be saved because of the lockdown, but it has an impact of the economic and social, concerns. It has also the economic and social concerns. Now, what are the reasons for livelihood loss during the pandemic? आपका employment क्यों चली गई pandemic की वजह से? Number one reason is supply chain disruption. Because the borders were closed down, the trade restrictions were in place, there was confinement measures taken across the globe, the supply chain got disrupted. Now we have to understand that because there is unpredictability of the demand of various products, because we have seen that demand has plunged down. Because there is no demand, the supply will but naturally come down. Along with that, there are supply side constraints such as trade restrictions, such as border closures, such as confinement measures. These are some of the important reasons that have actually caused the supply chain disruption. अब जब supply ही नहीं होगी तो आपको employment किसके लिए देनी पड़ेगी? आपको employees किसके लिए जरूरत है? If you are not producing, if you are not supplying, the industries will not employ people. Fine. Number two, the effect on MSME. The effect on MSME is one of the important reasons why people have lost livelihood. Now, MSME sector has disproportionately got impacted by the pandemic. Now, micro, small and medium enterprises, we have seen that because of the pandemic, in the first quarter of 2021, we have seen that MSME sector, the net sales, the average net sales of the MSME have fell down by 47%. That means almost half of their sales have come down. Fine. Now, this has been the effect of COVID-19 on the MSME sector, and after the lockdown, when the MSME sector started operating again, and they have seen that they are operating only at an 11% capacity. That is 89% is actually not being used for the production of goods and services. Fine. Now, therefore, only working at an 11% capacity will create a problem. They have also seen that 56% of MSME sectors, MSME industries, MSME firms are not producing anything at all. Fine. यानी आधी से ज्यादा MSME जो आपके firms है वो कुछ production ही नहीं कर रहे हैं because demand has plunged. Now, because of this MSME sector की वजह से we have seen 35 to 40 million job losses in MSME sector. Now, another important reason why people have lost livelihood is because of the weak demand. Now, we have seen that there has been lower consumer footfall, यानी जो consumers है जो आपके demand करते हैं products को वो आपके आते ही वो आएंगे ही नहीं retail shops में कुछ चीजें purchase करने में because there is weak consumer sentiments. आप you have started saving for the difficult times. There are mobility restrictions. आप बाहर ही नहीं निकल सकते थे तो consumer footfall कैसे होगा? Because of these reasons, we have seen the demand is dwindling because COVID-19 has hit the economy and lockdown is in place. Fine. These are the reasons why it has impacted the livelihood of the people. Now, what is the impact of livelihood losses? अब livelihood loss अगर हो गया उसकी वजह से क्या इंपैक्ट पड़ा है? फाइन. नंबर वन इंपैक्ट इज नेगेटिव कोपिंग स्ट्रेटजीज. दैट मींस मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द पीपल दैट आर डिपेंडेंट ऑन एग्रीकल्चर. अब एग्रीकल्चर में देयर इज लेस डिमांड. फाइन. ऊपर से आपका रिवर्स आपका माइग्रेशन हुआ है. अब माइग्रेशन होने की वजह से ओवर जो है डिपेंडेंस होगी एग्रीकल्चर पे. नाउ बिकॉज ऑफ दैट, सिंस देयर इज नो डिमांड, सिंस द प्रोडक्शन इज नॉट गोइंग टू हैपन, सप्लाई चेन हैव बीन डिसरप्टेड, लेस डिमांड, वीक डिमांड, कंज्यूमर लेस, lower consumer footfall, mobility restrictions. Because of all these things, we have seen negative coping strategies by these agricultural workers. What is this negative coping strategy? That means to cope this loss, they have started the distress sale of their assets. They have started child labor. They have the migrant agricultural workers. They are actually the most vulnerable population. This is the population that has impacted hugely because of the livelihood loss. Now, then we have informal workers. Now, we know that informal workers, they don't earn much. There is not good working conditions. There is an absence of social protection. There is dependence on day-to-day earnings for sustenance. Why? Because what they earn, they feed by that earning of the day. If they don't earn in the day, they won't be able to have the 2 meals of the day. Now, because of this day-to-day earning for sustenance, this is an important and vulnerable section of the population. Now, because it's so vulnerable, we have seen that many of the informal workers were not able to access the same employment options as before. Why? Because there are travel restrictions, there are mobility restrictions, there is weak demand. We have seen that these informal workers are not able to access the same employment that they were in before the pandemic, before the lockdown. Because of this, if they are not earning, they have to sustain, and for that they have started borrowing money on interest, and if you borrow money on interest, you fall back into poverty. That is an again important aspect and impact of livelihood loss. Then you have gender perils. We have seen gender inequalities have aggravated because of COVID-19. We have also seen it has unevenly impacted the women and the girls precisely in the domains of health, economy, social protection, and we have also seen an increase in the gender-based violence. This is an important impact of livelihood loss. Again, there are increased disparities among the workers. We have seen the higher paid workers that are working from home, and there is an option of working from home, but the lower paid workers, the blue-collar workers that are engaged in the manual work, that are engaged in the tough and physical and manual work, there is no option of working from home. It has created a huge inequality and disparity among these high paid and low paid workers. Also, the higher share of low paid workers, they are actually engaged in nursing and policing and teaching and cleaning and refusal removal. They are store attendants. Now, because these occupations have direct contact with the people, now they can actually get more infected, impacting their health as well. As long after that, they also are impacted by the fact that these particular, for example, hospitality services, hotels and restaurants and tourist services, they are actually disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and they have suspended activities, leading to more unemployment eventually. Now these are some of the impacts of livelihood loss. Now what are the future strategies for restoration of the means of livelihood? Now how do we restore the means of livelihood? Now this livelihood loss that has happened because of the COVID-19, how do we restore it? Now first important step for that is labor market policies. Now there was a recent data given by National Career Service Portal, that is under Ministry of Labor and Employment. They have highlighted a very important fact, that the job seekers, that are people that are seeking jobs, they are actually present in different states, and the vacancies and employers that are giving the job are actually present in different states. Now because the job seekers are someplace else and job givers are someplace else, there is a requirement of labor mobility. We need to have a portability process in place, in which we can actually have this labor mobility and bridge the gap between the job seekers and the job givers. This is an important labor market policy. Number 2, we have reforms in non-farm sector. Now see, because we have seen the return migration, the people that have returned back from the urban areas to the rural areas, and now we know that agriculture does not have the capacity to absorb this huge and enormous population. Therefore we need to look at not at the farm sector but at the non-farm sector. Rural non-farm sector has to be developed. We have to rethink about the strategy and development of the rural non-farm sector to actually be able to absorb this huge population that has migrated to these rural economies. This is an important aspect. Then you also have to strengthen informal urban economy as well. Now why? Because the return migration has happened, but this return migration after the lockdown opens, and when these people from rural areas go back to the urban areas, now the urban areas has to be strengthened, it has to be enhanced to be able to absorb this return migration of the people from rural areas to urban areas. Therefore we also have to strengthen the informal economy in the urban areas, and we have to also develop the housing conditions, the slum living conditions, because it will have an impact on housing, employment and health interventions. This three-pronged approach need to be taken for the reviving of the urban informal economy. That is important aspect of strategizing how to restore means of livelihood. Then we need to have a workers registry. We do not have a proper workers registry, national level registry as of now for the poor. And for those people that are engaged in the informal jobs, we need to have this unemployment registry. We need to have people that are registry for people that are unemployed, so that we can give them the universal basic income, some direct economic assistance. We can also take them under the universal health coverage. We can also give them other protection and social support. But for that you need to have data, and for the data you need to have workers registry. Now this is an important strategy by which, if any crisis happens again in the future, we need to have a proper registry in place so that we can actually give them these benefits. Then we need to revitalize the farm sector. As I already told you, that because the migration has happened from the urban economies to the rural economies, and precisely to the rural farm sector, our farm sector is not that much developed that it can accommodate such an enormous rural population. Therefore we need to revitalize the farm sector. We need to make it more efficient. We need to make it more big, so that the absorption can happen. Now these are some of the important steps that are taken by the government regarding this particular thing. Now let us see one by one what are the relief measures taken by the government. Number one, we have special insurance scheme in place. Now special insurance scheme providing rupees 5 million, that is 50 lakh cover for health workers. Health workers के लिए हमने एक special insurance scheme रखी है, providing rupees 5 million cover for these particular health workers. Number 2, we have PM Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. For that we have additional 5 kg of rice and wheat, and this 5 kg additional rice and wheat will be given to 0.8 billion poor people in in India. Fine. This is Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, PMGKY. Under this PMGKY, we have cash transfers directly to the Jandan account of women, of senior citizens, and also under Ujjwala scheme, we have given free cylinders, and also contributions has been made by the government in the provident fund of these particular workers. Now, this is important relief measure given by the government to these people. Now, also we have done some changes in the Manrega. Under Manrega scheme, the wages that were given to these workers have been increased by rupees 20 per day per worker, and or to rupees 20 per day, or it can be rupees 2,000 annually per worker on an average has been increased under Manrega. Then we have under Ajivika Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana. Under this Yojana, we have given collateral free loans to women in under self-help groups. Now, this collateral free loan will be actually doubled to 6.3 million women that are organized in these self-help groups. Then we have under the existing PM Kisan Samman Nidhi, that is PM Kisan Samman Nidhi scheme. In this particular scheme, we have increased an installment of rupees 2,000 that will be transferred to 87 million farmers. Fine. Now, rupees 2,000 installment will be transferred to 87 million farmers in India. Now, these are some important relief measures given by the government in this particular sector. Now, let's look at the conclusion. We have seen that the COVID-19 has been, disruptive and devastating for the economy of India, and we must recognize this opportunity to build India back again, build India back better and be more prepared for the future crisis. And there is a need to develop a long-term strategy, a sustainable strategy to address the challenging, address the challenges we are facing in the health sector, in the agricultural sector, in the informal sector, and precisely in the rural poverty. We need to tackle rural poverty. We need to give better jobs. We need to have social protection schemes. We need to have safe migration pathways for the people, and we need to also formalize our informal sector. This is an important article and featured news for the Gazette discussion of July 19, 2021. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please share the video and subscribe to the channel. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.